Okay, yeah, this is following up a video you may have seen, and it's really just for dentists. It's just to show the background really to the video you may have seen. So this is the video. Just bumped into an old patient. We're all old now, on the Downs, and anyway, this is quite an interesting story.
Hello, my name's Clive. I was a patient of this man 30 years ago. He did a bridge for me, which he told me would only last 10 years. It lasts 30 years. So I've only just had it removed because it needed removing, and I've decided to go for implants, which are going to cost me £6,500. But I was offered to have a tooth stuck on either side, which I decided not to do. But if you look at the top of my mouth here, that one is stuck to the other side, which this gentleman did for me there, and that's also been there for 30 years. It's caused me no problems whatsoever, so I recommend it.
All right, so they then followed on. But as a dentist, if you go into this teethforlife.org.uk, you can find a video from that I made during lockdown, and it was for some FDs. Now it's a really long video, right, and it's the only one I ever made, and on there it's like the trial run. So it's about an hour and a half long, but I think all the pictures I've got are about to show you are from this section, and that's a different section, but the links still work, and this is something else that I did in lockdown, but you know, who am I? Nobody looks. So so this is kind of the first one that I did, or rather the second acid etch bridge I did. And I had been to the GDC, so I do know that we can get into trouble, and it's a lesson. But I hadn't done anything wrong at all. It was a nonsense. But I got fined 2 weeks' wages. So yeah, so then left that practice, surprisingly enough, and so I'd have been about 26 when I ended up being a partner in a practice. And the following year, within a very short period of time, a girl came in, and a different dentist had made what was the traditional bridge, which had a metal wing here. And so I don't know how, but I'd heard that we would get more success if it had one wing. Now, if you look at some of the videos, they still say use 2 wings, but no, use 1 wing. So I cut off the wing, and so she'd come in, and I'd re-cemented it 2 or 3 times. And she came in, she was 17, a very pretty young girl, and extremely upset. And I said, I'm going to cut one of the bits off, and she was just in tears, and she, you know, I was going to get sued again. She was, anyway, yeah, she stayed an extremely loyal patient for another 30 years, and the tooth never moved. Oh yeah, and I took an x-ray, so that says it all. And you know, it's a digital x-ray, so it was some years later. And yeah, I raised a flap and removed the bone, and yeah, right, no, it's still there. Anyway, again, I went on a course about these bridges, I think, but I remember distinctly that the guy giving the course says, you can't do this, you can't do one tooth. His example was a central off a lateral. Well, you know, that was a bit dull, because the root on the lateral isn't big enough, really. So I'd used the root of the central. And of course now, if it had been worried about rotation, I'd have made a splint, you know, just to wear now and again like a retainer. Yeah, this is just awful, really. However, the patient clearly was a very heavy smoker, and yeah, I haven't said the name, so that's great. And I actually made all these pictures for my peer review group. Get a peer review group, they're brilliant. You learn a lot more if you can talk informally. So she came in, surprisingly enough, with a bit of perio, and her lower central, the lower right one, was extremely loose. And so, you know, I didn't want to make her a denture. I didn't want to do much, really. And she wasn't going to give up smoking. She's definitely never going to give up smoking. So anyway, so I said, well, I'll cut it off, and we've got these new adhesives, I'll glue it back on. And that's what I did. Anyway, a few years later she came in, and it says there, the lower, I think it's the other one, the central, I think I wrote that wrong. But basically, the other central tooth was extremely loose, and I took it out and I glued it back in. And that was fine, except it fell out. And not only did it fall out, she lost it. And so I had to make a traditional, you know, I said, right, that's it, you can have your denture. And I'd normally then take out the other laterals, because they were wobbling about. And no, so I thought, well, okay, we'll give it a go. and this was on the health service. This is naughty work, but you know what? It lasted a long time. The worst thing is it didn't pick up the stain. So you can do all kinds of wonderful things. So this was, I saw a new patient, and I come across this, and I couldn't work it out because this is the wing, right? That's the amalgam. On reflection, he probably had the tooth. He had a bridge made, a Maryland bridge made prior to having a problem. So he must have had a problem. But fortunately, as you can see, he has an excellent root filling done, because they all have to be perfect to work. And that was, he maintained it was done 20 years previously in the dental school. And this was another case. So this was one of the first people I referred. I never did one implant. I think, you have to, it's an assumption, but the clientele I thought couldn't afford it. And not only that, I didn't have the skills. I wasn't keen on surgery. So anyway, so as you can see, and this was done by an extremely good specialist who's now teaching at Bristol Dental Hospital in his retirement years. Extremely good. I referred, he was the only person at that time I referred to. And but for the lateral, while she was offered an implant, we had a chat, and I did Maryland, and that's still there. And this is just part from the thing that I put on for the FDs, because I do remember some things, but I don't remember everything, and we don't need to now, because we can just Google it. So these are just like nudges for me, so it gets ridiculous. So this was 2013, no symptoms, but the root was outside the tooth. Now, the patient didn't want a denture, and it wasn't giving her any problem, but it was in her smile line. And you can see how it kind of, I've only got a couple of pictures. But so there's two pictures there, 6 years apart. So, I'm retired now. I can't remember actually taking it out. Right, so I retired in a year to 2020. So you don't rush into, if they're not giving them a problem, you have time. So this guy, I don't know why I took the PA, but he wasn't in pain. That's right, I thought about crowning the tooth. Well, going back to the previous acid etch bridge, there's probably two canals there. And the one canal that was filled wasn't, as you would say, filled to the apex. So, it's got an area there. So, but he wasn't getting any symptoms. So it looks like I tried to do a CEREC on him, and I love doing my CERECs, but I certainly wasn't going to try and re-root treat it, and that failed, unfortunately. But there is a limit. You can see what I was trying to do. Sorry, can I go back? Oh yeah, so you can see what I was trying to do. In the end I gave up, and the tooth's still there. I never made that bridge, but that was the reason for hanging on to it. And again, he couldn't it was clear he couldn't afford an implant. So he's had, what's that? He was still there when I retired, so that's 13 years. And you see lots of people saying, oh, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. If they're not having a problem, then should we do anything? And so when Glacionomer came out, it was great, you could just stick it on anywhere. So invariably, if someone came in during a checkup and they cracked a tooth, then as you can see there, I just kind of put a groove in the tooth, and I'd just put a Glacionomer and say, look, you need to come back. When it falls back out, make sure you book yourself in. It would have been for half an hour now. Actually, for this one, it would have been for an hour and a quarter, actually. I would have had a coffee and done a CEREC. But often the patient would come in and the bit had fallen off, not as bad as this, not as big as this. And it was like 6 years later, and rather than have the whole thing repaired or replaced, they'd elect for the repair. And often we're guilty of doing too much, I feel. So this is kind of a typical classic case. And I think it said it there, is, if it came in within 6 weeks, normally they'd book in for the full length. But if it lasted 6 years, then they just want a repair again. And I got one of these, and it got my CEREC, I can't remember the date, but I had it for about 10 years, but then it sort of did need replacing and things started to go awry. But this is called a Volks crown, right? All my patients loved them. There was only one piece of work that I did that everyone said, you know, last time you did that machine, can we do it again? So this is, again, just showing you what kind of can happen. So this was 2011, and I remember the patient well, very particular. I think this started to play up before then, and I did the root filling, which is pretty reasonable, but there was a sinus, I think, and it was just, she was going to lose it. I'm just going to lose this, what do you do? So I just said, right, well, we'll try this. So I chopped it off. I probably want to say something more technical, but basically that was it then. And then what I did was it looks like I did a Maryland off the 3, and so she had a smile, and this lasted from there to there. That's 9 years. I think in the end, no, she must still have it, but when I finished, because that's then. And yeah, so I'm not an academic. These are just X-rays that I took because I need to take them, and the pictures I just took because I had a camera, and the pictures I used to use to show the patients. There are a lot of pictures that I've taken, and they're really rough, but they're only to show the patients on the screen. It's a great way to show them what's going on. So you can see there's a sinus here, and I don't think there was one there, but this lady always had these sinuses, and I never, you can see I never had any foundation training, but I went to see a guy after my appointment with the GDC, who was a private dentist, and his attitude was, now you've left dental school, you need to learn some things. And what he said was, I remember going to see him and saying, this patient's got a sinus, I'll have to take the tooth out. And he said, well, is it bothering them? And it wasn't. And he says, well, leave it. And so if it's a draining sinus, you have to consider what the options are for this patient. So this patient occasionally has had a draining sinus for definitely 30 years. And actually, this side stayed good. It was the same on the other side. You can see these X-rays are pretty grim. But for her, I made a bridge out of acrylic that's definitely lasted. Well, my nurse saw her in the supermarket a few weeks ago. It was still there, so it's been there 10 years. And yeah, I've got pictures of that and X-rays. But it was a disaster. But I never did the root fillings for her. They were done over 30 years ago, and they're definitely not perfect. This chap came in as a new patient then, and you look at the bite wings, and I said, wow. And at that time, I was doing a lot of bonded amalgams, and I thought, well, I can do a bonded amalgam, make a crown. And he said, well, it's been like this for a while, and obviously this wasn't any good. Whoops, but it was firm. Don't know what, and then, right, so it was firm. And you can see that's after, how many years is that? That's 9 years. These still weren't bothering him, so there's no way I was going to touch them. And we had a deal, is that, if anything started to bother him, I would sort it out. But I never touched him. And these roots, yeah, they're a lot easier to take out now. I mean, this one's nearly exfoliated. That would have been a dog to do. Yeah, so sometimes we can wait. I think it's difficult. It's easy for me to see people and wait, because a lot of these people I'd seen for years, and it's not so easy when you're recently qualified. And this is just a warning. I think that it'll play video. Right? Well, it will.
Hi, this is Dr. Feng Hui Chen speaking. Today I want to talk about use ozone therapy as a...
Right, so stop it there, because she talks absolute garbage, and you do get a lot of garbage, and I used ozone quite a lot, and I really like my ozone machine. We don't get paid on the health service for that. And this was another one that I took at the time, and it was on YouTube, and the guy was showing how good he was. So these are root canals, and if you look closely, you can see, yeah, they're on deciduous teeth. And yet, at the end of the, I'm not going to play the video, at the end of the video, you know, this child has got 4 anterior crowns on deciduous roots that have been root treated under GA for God knows how many hours. And that's just plain criminal. So be careful. This is what I used to do in the end, so you know I've made an app, and the idea was to send the patient this email with the BPE and say put it into the app, that, and you know, the email says what the app is, but also there's one saying, oh you can see there saying how your oral health is related to your general health. There's a video there, it's an old video, that link will still work, but also about how you check yourself for oral cancer and monitor. And that's why my app says save a life, share teeth for life. You know, we've got to try, but sometimes bureaucracy gets in the way. And yeah, I mean, my notes weren't great, but this is, what's that, that's over 20 years ago. Right, these are standard notes. So back in the day, we didn't have computers, so you'd scribble down, and clearly my handwriting is rubbish. And but that's how I used to work. And on this case, I'd done an apicectomy. Well, I didn't do many, right? And also, when I did my apicectomy, I'd never seen one. I had seen it, but I was way back behind all the people when I was a student, and I just didn't see it. And so the night before, I had a quick look on the book before I did it. Of course, now you can go on YouTube, so in theory, we should all be doing them. And it did work, because that's the crown. I mean, now that crown is awful. I mean, you can see that's an awful crown. But guy, he was pleased about that. Yeah, it was bizarre because this patient who I did it on, it was when I just started my practice or with a partner, and he attacked me when he was about 14 with snowballs, and he didn't stop attacking people, to be fair. He ended up in a lot of trouble. And the lower teeth were, he wanted me to, I can't remember quite what happened, but the teeth were worn and chipped, and we shouldn't have done it. But anyway, these are all laminates. You can see one that's chipped there, and I refused to do anything with it. Then he asked me to replace them because they got a bit of recession around them, and it would have been a lot of money, you know. And this is I think this is the only case that I did like that on the lowers, and I think it works all right. And it's definitely a lot better than doing a composite builder. But these weren't done on my CEREC. These were done before then. And I certainly wouldn't have tried to do them with a Maceric milling for him, but I did for a lot of older people who basically just wanted one colour and one tooth and no space. And these were just standard notes. So this is just to say these were the notes that we kept. And you didn't write many notes because otherwise your folder got full. The notes we take now, when an FD, if I saw a patient who'd been seeing the foundation dentist, the notes would take, they would take them about half an hour to write the notes, and you can type quick, and it takes you forever to find out the possible problem. So everything I wanted was needed here. I don't know if there's anything that I thought was dodgy, but normally I put a little asterisk around it. Oh yeah, so there's one. So that means that an indirect pull cap, and so if a DPC was direct pull cap. So if he came in and there was a problem on the lower left, and I couldn't, really identify it that easily, then that would be the one I would go to. Anyway, and this clearly had a camera in 2008, and it's a lot more expensive than the cameras I've got at home that would take just to get a picture. And they cost me, the one at home cost £40. But I didn't do the root fillings for this lady, and I didn't do the crowns. And the crowns were good. The root fillings weren't so good. So I referred to the dental hospital saying, I don't know what this swelling is, I don't really know what to do. And I didn't want to redo the root filling. And they advised that I took the tooth out. We decided just to keep an eye on it. And then one day the swelling went, and that was it. Doing root fillings isn't an exact science, although you would think it was when some of the lectures you go to. And this was just interesting. The guy fell off his bike, and he said, it's really, really sensitive. I banged my tooth, it's really, really sensitive. and I couldn't see anything. Until I pushed it a bit, and so I've been on a course, and so basically I just used acid etch, and so he gave the course, and this is clearly I'm not quite sure how long the fracture must have gone right through the tooth, and the glue basically didn't get through to the plate aspect, and it did deteriorate. But again, the tooth didn't even discolour, and it's not painful, and as far as I'm aware, the tooth's still like that. And this one, that was again the lady I was going to say. I don't think there's a picture there, but you can see these are old x-rays, and somehow I think they've got slightly muddled, because this is how I remember it, and I always thought this side was going to fail. I didn't redo the root fillings for her. When was that one? I don't think I perforated, but I could have done, because I did redo the posts for her and made new post crowns, but that was a while ago. But I didn't do the root fillings. But this is so for the previous lady. She did lose a tooth in the end, and she was the one that I made I took out the tooth that actually broke was a central. Anyway, it was a central tooth, so it was that one that failed, and I took the tooth out, and I removed both the crowns, and I made an acrylic bridge using maceric, and it's, well, as I said, it's lasted 10 years, and the other side looks fine. Oh, and that means I've messed up, but the last one is this one, and a patient I referred to the endodontist specialist because the upper 6 needed root filling, and I wasn't that confident on it, and she was extremely particular, and so I referred her to an endodontist. So I was quite interested, how she have to be. So I used Lightspeed, and I used System B for a while. I used Simple Fill, I think it was called. But anyway, this was done, as you can see, tooth was done prior to that. But of course, at that time, you had huge access cavities, and when it came back, I remember there's absolutely nothing to glue the crown with, and it was right. Oh, you can see there's nothing left of the tooth at all. But anyway, she's still got the crown, and I'd done a root filling in the 5 that the endodontist didn't think was perfect, so he redid it. And then what happened was she started to get pain, and I couldn't figure it out. And I thought, well, the root fillings look fine. So you can't see it, but I actually filled 2 roots here on the 4. So I elected to do the 4, and she was still in pain. And I couldn't work out. Well, I thought, well, the root filling on the X-ray looks fantastic. And then what happened a while later? Well, you can see. I think it's called over treated. So we probably did use Lightspeed, but it was the 5 that had gone. So I referred to a guy I taught, and he's got a CBT scanner. The 4 had 3 roots in it, so I hadn't filled all the root canals, and that probably, although it wasn't until it was bothering her, he elected to take it out, which I think was the right thing to do, and he put an implant in. So they're just some stories about teeth, and the other thing lasts about an hour and a half, but all these slides are from there, so if you are interested, have a look at them. Oh, and please go to Teeth for Life on YouTube. These huge long videos aren't there. I'll probably stick this one on there, but the other one, that's only on teethforlife.org.uk, and if you're interested, get in touch.